Emotional day for many families. Scott Harlan Thorpe walked into the Department of Health as well as a nearby restaurant and started shooting. 3 people were killed: Mike Markle, Pearlie Mae Feldman, and Laura Wilcox. Akiva, you put together a recount of what happened that horrible day.
Yeah, let's take a look. Let's just take you back there. The date was January 10th, 2001. Laura Wilcox was home for winter break, hoping to earn some extra money. She was working as a receptionist at the Nevada County Department of Behavioral Health, where she had worked the summer before. Scott Thorpe had an appointment. Laura was familiar with him, but this time Thorpe had a 9mm handgun and started shooting. 3 people were killed, others injured at the hands of Scott Thorpe that day, including 19-year-old Laura Wilcox. Scott Thorpe ultimately pleaded guilty to the crimes. His attorney argued he was mentally ill and the system failed him. For years, Thorpe's family get him committed. In 2003, Scott Thorpe was found not guilty by reason of insanity. He is currently being cared for at Napa State Hospital.
A very difficult time for these 4 people. Let me introduce them to you. This is Nick Wilcox. Thank you so much for joining us, Nick. This is Amanda Wilcox, the mother and father of, Laura Wilcox. And then we have the Thorpe representation. We have Sharon Thorpe and Kent Thorpe, the sister-in-law and the brother of the alleged gunman. Well, he's not alleged. We know what happened. Again, we want to thank you all so much for joining us. This is an emotional time. And what I'd like to start off with is you explaining to us how you tried to make something positive out of such a negative situation. You fought for a law to try to change things, didn't you?
We did. It wasn't really more than a month after the shooting that we made contact with Assemblywoman Helen Thompson, and then we worked on legislation to try and get help for those with severe mental illness. And ultimately, in 2002, a law was signed by Gray Davis called Laura's Law. That was AB 1421, and we've been working on that pretty much constantly since then. And it's been a long journey. It is now fully implemented in Nevada County, our home county, and it's been very successful in helping those with severe mental illness.
But one of the frustrating things is this law is about to expire, and I'm certain that wasn't your intent to have it only be in effect for 10 years.
Absolutely not. We realized that the shootings in part were related to mental health care, lack of resources, and lack of getting people with severe mental illness into treatment. And we wanted to make a long-term difference, and we thought we could do that through the legislative process. Normally when the law is passed, you think it will go on forever. It did. I did not have much knowledge. We were new at that process, but here we are where the law could expire. We have one county that has implemented it with great success, and of course we want it to continue.
And like so many things, part of the problem is money, isn't it? Some of the local governments are saying we just can't afford to implement it. That's got to be totally frustrating.
Well, it doesn't make sense, because what we're finding in Laura's Law, for every dollar expended in Laura's Law, they're saving $1.81. So $1.81 that could go to treatment that they don't have now. No. So it makes economic sense, and it's the right thing to do, getting people into treatment.
11 years ago, it's still fresh as can be, though, isn't it?
It softens over time, but yes, it's still there. It's something that will never go away. But you learn to live with it. It's like an uninvited guest in your home.
Thorpes, I'd like to bring you into this conversation, because I know that before it all happened, you tried to get help for your brother, and there wasn't anybody stepping up to give you a hand, was there?
Well, he had been receiving treatment at the Nevada County Health for like 5 years. Our frustration came about that we would try and call the doctor to maybe give him any behavioral changes or things that my brother had said, just so he could, well, hopefully tell us he's telling me the same thing when he comes to visit me, and if not, you know, when the time's right and the setting's right, maybe you can incorporate these things into his treatment plan.
And what was the response that you would get?
Can't talk to you. Confidentiality. Doctor-patient confidentiality. And it drove us crazy, because it's like, we're not asking you to divulge his medical records to us. We just want you to listen. We're going to give you some information, and we'll trust that you'll use it wisely and at the appropriate time and the appropriate method. But he wouldn't talk to us.
Watched all this unfold. You sat there helpless as well.
Well, yes, but with regard to trying to reach the doctor, I tried several times. Kent tried 6 times. I tried 4. I got 1 phone call. Kent never received a phone call from Dr. Heisman. So it's very frustrating to see your loved one in decline. You see things that are just becoming more and more bizarre. You're trying your best to help, and they're not working with you. That's wrong. That should not happen.
I mentioned at the start of the show, it's unusual to see the family members in a tragedy like this come together. You must have been struck by their efforts as well.
Towards Scott Thorpe. We didn't so much then, and we don't now.
Well, that's part of the difficulty in putting your arms around this subject, because apparently Laura and Scott knew each other because he'd come in for visits, and she must have been just shocked that he had the reaction that he did that day.
Everyone remembered Laura. After the shootings, we heard from clients who had come to the clinic, and Laura was a bright and beautiful 19-year-old. It was very important to her to treat the clients there with respect. And we knew the shootings weren't targeted at her. It wasn't because of Laura. It was a rampage shooting. She happened to be the one serving as receptionist that day and was shot. But it wasn't about her specifically. We understood that. It was about someone with severe mental illness who, in the disease of his mind, it all made sense.
And Nick, for the people out there who don't know what Laura's Law actually does, could you explain?
Laura's Law allows family members and others to seek a court order to compel their loved ones to engage in what's called assisted outpatient treatment, sometimes called assertive community treatment. These are teams of mental health workers who have a very intense relationship with a relatively small number of clients to bring them help. It's a model that is used nationwide. It's shown to be very effective. It's somewhat expensive to implement, but as Amanda said, the way you count really depends on how you look at it. If you look at the cost of the treatment versus the avoided costs, it's clear that providing treatment up front saves society money, and it makes us all safer.
And Kent, is there anything that could be done that could change the reaction that you got when you tried to coordinate things with your brother's doctor? Is there something you'd like to see changed in that way?
Well, yes, but it doesn't really require any law or anything. Nobody's convinced me that there's no reason that a doctor can't just listen to you.
HIPAA regulations, is that what they cited?
I'm simply passing information on him to use as he sees fit when it's appropriate. And so there's no conflict with doctor-patient confidentiality for that. Plus, in our case, Scott was very open. He's very trusting of me. If I wanted, I could have gone down there and had him sign a release form so that the doctor could talk to me. But I figured, hey, it's a county mental health facility. He's probably got a pretty big workload, client list. I don't really need him to feed back to me. But if I needed to, I could have got that. So I would just say, doctors, look, listen. You're not not going to get in any trouble by listening.
Have you done a lot of second guessing over the years? If only he'd have listened to us, maybe. Is that what you've done?
My wife, at the trial, when Dr. Heitzman finished his testimony, she bolted out of the courtroom after him, and she had him pinned into a sofa, a bench, and just saying, "Why didn't you listen to me? Why didn't you do something?" And
would have made a difference.
Could have made a difference. Well, I know Assemblyman Mike Allen is trying to extend Laura's Law. We're going to be talking with him in just a short while. I just want you all to know how grateful we are that you came and shared your thoughts, because I know this is a very difficult remembrance for you on this day. And, again, thank you. If we can make a difference, perhaps so that some other families don't have to go through what you've gone through, that would be a good thing.
Laura would be 31 years old today.
Is that right?
Yeah.
God bless y'all. Thank you all so much.
Assemblyman Mike Allen, Democrat from Santa Rosa, thank you so much for getting up with us today.
Good morning, Kiva.
We're going to continue the conversation that we started the first half hour. We're talking about the 2001, actually January 10th, 2001, when Laura Wilcox and 2 others were shot dead by Scott Thorpe, who suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. Out of that came Laura's Law, which is also AB 1421. Let's remind people, what did Laura's Law do?
Basically, Laura's Law provided an alternative to saying to folks who didn't want treatment that they would go untreated. It allowed family members, members of the mental health community, even law enforcement to say, you know, you're a danger to yourself, or you might be a danger to the community, and so we're going to help you. We're going to get you supportive services. And so it allowed for a way of getting a court order so that people could get the help they need. I think it's usually preferable if people have voluntary help and they realize they have an illness and they take care of themselves. But some people are so ill, so gravely ill, they don't even recognize they need help.
And that was signed 2002 by the
Correct.
Governor
Yes.
Gray Davis.
Mm-hmm.
What happened, though, shortly after as far as funding? And then I know Prop 63 tried to help as far as the funding of Laura's Law.
Well, with any new program, there's always startup costs. And although Laura's Law has shown to actually save money and to be a compassionate law, it takes upfront money. And then Prop 63 was implemented, and it said that essentially that it could pay for services, and a controversy erupted as to whether it could pay for these kind of services. I believe it can pay for those kind of services.
And you believe Laura's Law can save lives?
It absolutely will save lives, lives for the people who need the help, possibly lives in the community. It's the sort of thing where it's been now in effect since 2002, 10 years. County has had really good results with it. A similar law was passed in New York in 2000, and it's shown to be very compassionate, to save money, to save lives, and to fill a gap in our mental health system for treatment.
But here's the problem. It expires next January, so just
Correct.
one more year. How can we work to extend that?
Well, I'm introducing a bill to extend Laura's Law. I know that Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors just voted unanimously that they have a pilot program. They want to see it survive. Nevada County wants it to survive. And we're hoping the counties can opt into it as they find creative ways to finance it, because ultimately it saves lives and money.
And you're also working on a hospital safety bill, which has similar background to it.
My hospital safety bill was signed by the governor in January. It goes into effect, and that enjoyed unanimous support both by the Republican and Democratic Party. That once again provides to fill in the gaps for treatment for folks who are languishing in hospitals, not getting treatment, and it provides for them to get upfront attention from the court so that they're not waiting for months to get treatment that they need.
And it's one thing we don't realize often until something like this happened to Laura.
Oh,
how
absolutely.
important these laws are.
Yeah, well, I was a psychiatric nurse before I was an attorney, and so I worked in the field, and so I know how important it is for people and families to get the support they need.
And you heard the Thorpes earlier.
Oh,
they
yes.
knew that Scott needed help.
And that's often the case, that you have frustrated folks out there in the community, or family members, or daughters, or brothers, you know, people who want to see their families get help, but there isn't a mechanism to do it, and so Laura's Law filled that gap.
Okay, when will we know as far as 2013 extension?
Well, we're in the process of introducing it. It'll go through the legislative process, and hopefully the governor will sign it, so we should know in the next few months.
Okay, Assemblyman Mike Allen, thank you so
you.
much for joining
Thank you.
News 10 at 9. We're going to send it over to Sharon Ito, who is tracking what's going on in the headlines. Sharon.